Hey everybody, Dr. David Evans here. We're happy for all of you who are watching our PIC TV network news channel, and also we're on a talk channel on the PIC TV network. We want you to push that watch party button, push that share button. All of you who are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you're TikTok, wherever you're watching in the PIC TV network audience. We want to say hello to our friends in France, Argentina, Nicaragua, United States, Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala, United Kingdom, Germany, Panama, Ireland, Peru, Chile, all over the world. We want to thank you for watching the PIC TV network. Our broadcast is literally on around the world. This is Dr. David Evans, your president from the nation's capital. We are happy to bring you the greatest information on the planet tonight. We're going to be talking about reconnecting the generation. Yep, in the generations plural. You know, most of us who live on this planet for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, you have a story. And our parents have lived a long life, and we want to keep their legacy alive. And that's why we're on tonight. And I want to thank our panel guests. We have from New York with us, Patricia. Hey, Patricia from New York. Hey,
how are you?
The Big Apple is here in the house once again. We're going to go all the way to Maryland. Candace from Maryland. Thank you, Candace. Thank you for popping in, helping us on the stage. And we got Allison all the way from London. Hey, Allison, our special guest tonight. She's also working with us behind the scene, and the one and only Mr. Campbell, Manchester Global Solutions. He is also our co-creator of the PIC TV network, and I'm Dr. David Evans. Listen, let's get right into it. Let's get down to business. You know, our topic tonight has been a topic that a lot of people just take for granted, you know, but we're going to talk about it tonight on the PIC TV network news channel and our Brick Talk Show channel, reconnecting the generation. I want to get right into this with Patricia. Patricia, you know, you're in New York. Let's talk about when you were young, Patricia, some of the things that you missed that the connection of this generation don't have. You know, when we were growing up, some of the values that mom and pops put in you that you just don't see today anymore. Come on, Patricia, talk about it.
Yeah, well, me and Allison were having a nice discussion on this, and she agreed. So she might want to follow up on this one or finish my sentences. But we were talking about the family dinner table. And for some reason, that seemed to be lost somewhere along the generations. And, you know, now it's almost like a novelty to sit down, maybe if you're lucky for a special occasion, but it seems to be one of those things that kind of like just went by. And, you know, I would like to hear more about what Allison has to say about it, because we're having a nice discussion on this. But yeah, it's just, you know, for me growing up, it was definitely, that's when we shared our stories, our highs and lows of the day. And, you know, another thing that I was sharing with Allison, when it was, you know, a get together or a weekend and you got together with extended family or friends, it was that coffee table time. You know, you sat around with coffee or tea and you shared stories, and you know what, that seemed to have been lost. You don't see it in the new generations, and I would love to see that come back. And yeah, let's hear what Allison has to say.
Absolutely, Patricia, thank you. One of the things that really struck out to me with regards to that and having that sense of family and coming together, we have these expensive dining tables now, but they're actually part of the furniture, they're decor, because nobody's really using them. The expression, we are cash rich and time poor, came to mind, because the odd occasion when we do gather around the dining table, it's literally to gulp down the food to get on to the next thing that we're doing. And then there's no communication. The art of conversation within families, I feel, is being lost also, because we're not having that connection and everybody's on a device or doing something. So yes, Patricia, to your point, that coming together, that family time is so missed and so lost. And I think, to be honest, is so valuable that we are really doing this generation and the generations coming up a disservice by not engaging in that. Candice, over to you. What do you think?
Absolutely correct. A lot of the younger generation, they missed what we had. When I was younger, we would hop in the car and drive for hours from the DC metro area down to Myrtle Beach. And we would be there at my grandmother's house. And then, my father's, aunts and uncles and cousins would come over, and it would be a big occasion, even if just for the weekend. In addition to that, you mentioned, Allison mentioned sitting at the dining room table, drinking coffee or tea. And for us, we were in the kitchen. That's where our family recipes were sent down from one generation to the next generation. Whether it was learning how to steam clams and things of that nature in the backyard, or making Big Mama's pig picking cake, learning how to do that, or Aunt May's famous pound cake. We were in the kitchen, and it would be 4 or 5 of us, my cousins and I, and we would be in there with Big Mama or Aunt May or Aunt Flo or, somebody. And, we did that. And now to see the younger generation, I made a very precise decision that my children would have that experience as they were born and coming up. But what they would tell me all the time, my friends' families don't do this. They don't get together like we do this. We had dedicated family reunions and et cetera, et cetera. So I definitely see the disconnect between my generation and the next generation. So Ian, I'm gonna pass it to you. What is your take on it?
Yeah, thank you so much. And the conversation is interesting. I think that we missed an opportunity where COVID presented to us the opportunity for us to sit and be family. We spent the time panicking and running around, and people really came to realize that either they don't like their kids or they really miss their kids. So the family unit was really redefined during the last year and a quarter, year and a half. Everybody was stuck inside. Everybody had to be together. So it's an opportunity for folks you can only binge watch so much TV and do so much social media. And after a while, people started talking to each other, got together, sat around, and had those moments. Now, in the large context of reconnecting the generations in the family, it served as an opportunity to really do that, but I don't think everybody took advantage of it. Growing up in Jamaica and growing up with my grandparents, dinner time was a certain time. On Sundays, we had certain church, and by 3 o'clock it was eating, and there was family time. So in the U.S., you don't really have a lot of that time to be family. People working 2, 3 jobs, then passing each other in the day and in the night. So being able to have the last 18 months or 13, 15 months together on the one roof with family was a real opportunity to connect and get to know the family, have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together, and spend time together. And hopefully people took advantage of that, because instead of running out and stocking up on bread, stocking up on toilet paper, it was an opportunity for us to really connect with our neighbors who live next door to us, making sure they were okay, and having dinner together. If there was a single person, elderly person, we could have brought them in and make them part of our unit, part of our pod, where we're looking out for each other. So I'm hoping that we learned a lot from that last year and a half. But after looking at what I've been seeing on social media the past 2 days, I'm like, what's been going on in that vaccine? Because people are losing their minds out here. So I don't know which way to go about it. I'm just interested to see, how do we recover from this? How do we
reach out and truly make that effort, along with being the example, just helping other people to show that, you can be family, you can come together, you can do things together. So we just have to be the example.
Yep. And for me, it was bittersweet because I feel like it depended how you were affected health-wise with Corona. Because if you were healthy, it might have had a positive impact, like you said, a reconnection with the family, because you were forced in that situation. But if you were affected with bad health, then it was even a more disconnect. Especially if you had family members in a hospital and you couldn't even go see them. So, a coin does have two sides, and I was very blessed, and, I almost feel vulnerable to talk about it because so many people suffered loss, and I don't take that lightly, especially, I'm the owner of Miss You Graham. That is a global solution to cope with loss. And we were blessed that my immediate family was safe and sound, thank God. But so many people that we know lost people they loved, and I did lose people I knew. They weren't immediate family, but I was still very upset about it. But it does impact you differently when it's your immediate family. It just paralyzes you. So that really took, you have to consider that too.
And, being able to be with family during a time of crisis and loss, we hope that the people that were together did connect and get closer and appreciate the loved ones that they have, especially if you have been affected by illness, and you have somebody that you couldn't connect with and get close to. The people that were there that you could get close to, we're hoping that people took advantage of the opportunity to really just get a chance to know their family members better. One of the regrets I have is my grandparents passed away. And I didn't get a chance to really, not during COVID, I'm sorry, this happened before.
Okay.
But what I learned is I did not take the opportunity to really sit down with them and pull from them all the knowledge I could have. And, my grandfather had Alzheimer's, and, he passed, and shortly thereafter, my grandmother passed, because they were together like 70 years, so not extracting the information from them before they passed, that's knowledge that I can't, you can't recover. So you taking advantage of those times when we sat and spoke with our elders, spoke to the grandparents, spoke to our parents, gather knowledge, know about where our great-grandfather came from, great-great-grandmother came from, and learn about all these different aspects of our culture and history and background and heritage that we can only gather from, word of mouth and through passing it on. So if people were to take full advantage of that, being together, that I think that is something that could be said as a benefit from, the last, 18 months or so.
And you raised an interesting point there, Ian, because you said people realize that they either don't like their children or they really do like their children. And what's interesting to me, those people that realize they didn't like their children, who raised them? Who raised those children that you now don't like? And that is very, very interesting, because you've heard it so many times over the news that parents want their children to go back to schools, and parents they can't handle or can't cope with, and all the rest of it. And my thought was, you cannot cope with or handle your child? That I find bizarre, because I know that as old as I am, my mother can handle me. She can definitely, absolutely handle me, as big and as grown as I am. So when I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about how some of these families are, and how some of these parents do not know how to communicate with their children, their children show them no reverence, no respect. And that's one of the things, if I was to go back to the topic, one of the things from my upbringing, the way that we respected our elders, whether you knew them, yes or no. If you saw an elder on the street, whether or not you knew them, if that elder told you good afternoon, it was good afternoon. If you walked into your home and your parents had visitors, it was, because we all have these, we have a million aunties and uncles, right? Because everybody was either good evening auntie, good evening uncle, as you walked into the home, whether or not you knew that person, or if you grew up in the church, it was brother or sister so and so, right? But now you have children walking into the home and they're looking at the visitor or the guest like they're one of their friends or something. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, we asked the question, what happened? Well, part of what I believe is what happened is our generation did the future generations a disservice, in the sense of, for example, I'm first generation British. So you know that my upbringing was heavily steeped in Jamaican culture, because that's where my family's from. And again, the strictness of it, the very sternness of it. So what did we do? We then grew up in the Western culture, and then it was a collide of two cultures. We saw another way. We saw our peers being brought up a different way. So what did we say and do? When I grow up, I'm not going to raise my child this way. When I grow up, I'm not going to do that to my child. When I grow up, my child's not going to be forced to do this, that, and the other. And so we went from one end of the spectrum to the complete other end of the spectrum. And so there was a lot of things, values that were instilled in us coming up, that we did our children a disservice by not instilling in them. And it goes to show, because of the disconnect that we have. I'm not sure if any of you agree or disagree with that, but that is some my observations. That's just some of the things I've seen. And it really is quite heartbreaking, because now we're looking back and in hindsight thinking, if only I had instilled this in my child, or done this, or when my mother and father used to do this and that, I now understand why they were doing it. So rather than fighting against it, I wish I had embraced certain things and then passed down to my children and and the generations coming up. Candice, what do you think?
You're absolutely spot on. What we're seeing now is a disconnect from passing that heritage that we got as children, and that level of respect. When you enter a room and you speak to every person in that room. We've gotten past that. Somehow we dropped the ball on ensuring that the next generation, they did the same. It's automatic to have respect for an elder as you walk into a room, or if you see an elder in the street, we would stop and assist. We don't see that anymore. So as we move forward, coming out of a pandemic, those were certain things. As we're all stuck in the house together, we had to teach over again, had to renew relationships within the home, because what they do in the home is what they'll do outside of the home. So we had to reconnect with the our family, those of us that have children. We had to reconnect with our children and say, hey, I know you're out here in the world and you're experiencing other things, but let's just have a refresher course. Let's talk about this. Let's make sure this is how you handle yourself in this situation. This is your grandparents. My grandparents were sharecroppers. And make sure they understand and they value some things where they can step out into the world and then reciprocate that knowledge that they've gotten at home to the next, or to their children, or to their peers, even, because some of their peers, their parents are their best friends from when they were elementary, middle, high school. So they didn't get that I'm the parent, you're the child, and this is the way things go. So during COVID, we're all in this house, stuck together. That was the time. That was the time to strike and say, listen, I need you to be a good citizen, a good person, and be able to do that. Pat, what do you say?
Well, it's funny, you just like struck a chord, because like Allison said, my mother still knows how to handle me. I'm 50 years old. She still knows how to handle me. And she just has to give me that look. But what, it's funny, what you said, Candace, is we lead by example. So in essence, we have to take ownership that, somehow we did this, even though we're not happy with what the cake we baked, right? And with that being said, I did get stuck with something that you said, is that the new generation, I wanted to be that friend. I wanted to be my daughter's pal, but then there was a boundary that was constantly being crossed on both sides, because you know what? Like, my mother was never, listen, my mother was a loving mother, but she was no pal. She showed me how to cook. She, took me to the doctor. If I cried, she wanted to make sure I was okay. She loved me. But she was not my pal, and now in reflecting, now I have adult children and my grandmother now, but in reflection, I think maybe too many times I tried to be that pal, and then, they just have a different way about it when it goes to, dealing with their elders, and they're good girls. They're respectful girls, but I'm just saying, like, it's just different. I can't really put my finger on it, but something is different in the new generation. And I don't wanna go off on anybody. My children are good girls, but there is something different.
Yeah. It's amazing. Those who are watching, you're watching the PIC TV network. Our talk show and our news channel is on right now. Those who are watching, want to thank you for tuning in. Push that watch party button, push that share button, bring somebody in to the broadcast. Those who are watching right now, we thank you for tuning in. We are on from London, England, to New York City, to Washington, D.C., to Maryland, and all of you who are watching. Our topic tonight is a series. This is the first series of Reconnecting the Generations. We're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to come right back right after this.
We've all been hurt at some point, even abandoned. Many of us have done the hurting ourselves. We get to the point where we don't trust anyone, nor do we feel worthy of being loved by anyone. Then there's that one person who just doesn't give up on loving you. Their love is unconditional. Their love stays long enough for you to heal. And then they promise to never leave. That's love you can count on. God's love.
Hey everybody, we're back on. We want to thank you for watching our news segment tonight, and also our talk show. Those who are watching Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all our social media, family, the PIC TV network. We're excited to have this panel on tonight, and I'm excited to bring you this presentation. And this is a very, very serious topic tonight, reconnecting the generations. And I want to go throughout the panel once again. I'm seeing so many people chatting in. Thank you for chatting in from Facebook. We see your chats. I see these chats coming in from YouTube. Keep on sending the chats in. When we're talking about reconnecting the generation, I want to start with Allison, and I want to tell you from my perspective. Growing up in Washington, D.C., I'm 5 years old. My mother, Esther Evans, and John Evans, out of 9 kids, I'm the baby boy, and they always, every summer, took us down to North Carolina to meet Aunt Una in Durham, North Carolina, and Uncle Dougal in Red Springs, and Aunt Addie. We would drive 10 hours because my father said, I want you to know your people. He would take me to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and we would be at Aunt Cora's house. And he would take me to a graveyard site and say, that's where your great-great-grandfather is. We would go to Evans Hill and say, this is our hill. It was important for my father to instill in me at 5 years old these stories, the legacy of my parents, even though some of them were gone, of my aunts and uncles who were maybe gone, but my dad took me down there, my sister Darlene and Kenny, Elaine, Brenda, Esther, Junior, every summer. So he wanted us to know our people. My mother wanted us to know our people from down south. I want to hear from Allison, all the way from London, England, who's working with our PIC TV network business team. Allison, talk about you growing up, and was some of those same characteristics with your moms and pops trying to instill in you to don't forget the loved ones, don't forget those who were here before you. Come on, Allison.
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, and thank you, Dr. Evans, I'm first generation British. My mother born in Jamaica. And so for that reason, it was very important that culturally we knew where we were coming from. We knew our family, we knew our roots. And my mother has had an older sister that lived on the other side of London. And there were many weekends that we would drive over to Southeast London because I was born and raised Northwest London. So we would drive across to Southeast London. She also has a brother that still lives in East London, and we would go there. My mother had siblings in the Midlands, in Birmingham and Wolverhampton. And so there are times that we would go up there. So there was always that sense of family. I've always known who my family are. My whole life, my grandmother, she didn't live in the UK, but I knew who my grandmother was. I met my grandmother for the first time when I was 4 years old. But even before that, there was that bond and that communication. After that, my grandmother and I were very, very close right until she passed away in 2006. And so we always had that bond. We always had that connection. And then I grew up in a very predominantly West Indian community as well, and went to church in a predominantly West Indian church. So it was that case where I had that connection of, even if it wasn't my mother's family line, there were the people that I grew up with around me, knowing of their family line. And even things like growing up in the church, going to Sunday school, that sense of the community, that whole expression, it takes a village, because so many Sundays after church, I remember this so fondly, you'd either have children that would come round to ours for dinner after church on Sunday, or we'd go round to somebody else's. And it was such a beautiful thing, because if any stranger had walked into that any particular home, they wouldn't actually know which child belonged there from which child was just visiting. And that was that bond and that sense of community that we had. And I miss it greatly, because growing up now, all of my peers, we're all in our early 50s now, and we still have that connection. And we still call each other like cousin and brother and sister, even though by blood we're not related, but by bond we are. And we have some very solid, unbreakable bonds even to this day. So not just blood family, but that community that we grew up in as well. So that's me, 5 years old, some of my most vivid memories of growing up in London.
Wow, that is amazing. You know, when I hear your testimony and your story is just touching. You know, because that's very similar to our parents. I want to go to New York, and we're going to go to New York, and we're going to also bring in Pat from New York.
Well,
Pat,
that
I want
brings
to
to
ask
mind.
Patricia. I want to ask you the same question on that I asked growing up, and talk about why was it so important for your parents to instill in you, you know, that special moments of growing up. What made it special for you to remember your aunties, your uncles? You were talking about all of you piling up in the car, or just being together, and some of the things you missed growing up. Talk
Yes,
about.
we did. So, like she was saying, like Allison was saying, you know, not necessarily we were blood relatives, because my family is quite small when it comes to the bloodline. So we did have, when we had family come from my real family, they would come and visit for months on end. It would be seasonal visits because they would come from another country. In my case, Uruguay, which is, you know, at the tip of South America. So when they came to visit, like I said, it was for a season, but it was really amazing because the bonds that were made was so beautiful, and I have such beautiful memories. And I remember far back as 4 years old, and you know, it was really fun. But then my parents, when, you know, people that were like family, we would jump in a car, pile up, and, you know, drive. And it was just those road trips, and they were regular. You know, anytime there was no school, we were here in New York, so we would go either to the Poconos, was a very common place to go up in the mountains for snow tubing. We weren't really a ski family, but we go snow tubing. And then we'd go and drive all the way south and visit people south, and go all the way down to even Miami. And it was really a lot of fun, you know. And everybody, like Allison was saying, auntie, uncle, you know, it's just the way it was, and it was really awesome. And over to you, David.
Yeah, you know, it's very important for us to pass this legacy down. And I want to go talk to Candace for a minute before I get to Eon. It's so important for us to pass the legacy. Candace, when we were talking yesterday, you were talking about all you guys got in the car and drove together down to Ocean City or somewhere together, and nobody was complaining about, you know, get off of my side, you're too close to me. You know, it was nothing but a ball of love, because when you're growing up, you just want to have fun. You know, Candace, talk about that. Take me to the 10-year-old Candace, the 10 or 5-year-old Candace.
So at 10 years old, both of my parents are from the South. They both at Durham, North Carolina at NCCU. And after they had my sister, they moved up to the DC metro area. But growing up again, you know, the majority of the family was still in the South. So to stay connected with them, there was no choice but to hop in the car and go for a drive. Whether, you know, we did a drive for 3.5 hours, or I guess I want to say Myrtle Beach is is like 6.5 hours. Or sometimes we would even go further south. But we would get in the car and we would drive, and and congregate and be with family and extended family and folk that weren't family, but we never knew that. And everyone was cousin this or uncle that or auntie or those type of things. But and everyone knew who you were. Like, it didn't matter if I was in my town or my parents' town, whatever it was. They were like, oh, I know who baby you are. So everybody knew everybody, and if I was outside doing something I had no business doing, somebody else would step in as mom, dad, aunt, uncle, somebody, and they'd be like, listen, baby girl, we don't do that. We don't do that at all. So they would step in, and that was the norm. That was the exact normal, for some adult figure to be able to check me whether I was right or wrong. If they thought I was wrong, then unless Jesus himself came down to say otherwise, I was absolutely wrong. And then they would go back and tell my parents, like, listen, she was out here doing this. So not only was that person, checking me for a few minutes, and then they would go tell my parents, and then it would start all over again. My parents were like, you knew better than that, you knew this, and da, 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 so, but that was family. That was, and again, at 10 years old, I don't know, and I probably still wouldn't know if they were really family in the traditional sense, like bloodline, like Pat said, if they were truly bloodline or not. But they were family. They're still considered family. But we would hop in the car. And like I said, when I had children, I made sure that, we would hop in the car. My kids will tell that this is their favorite story. They would go to school, come home from school that Friday. I'm like, all right, bedtime. And whatever time I decided to wake up, it was go time. They had about 15 minutes, and I like pack a bag. We're gone for the weekend. And they look at it and say, what? Pack, we're gone for the weekend. And we would pull into Myrtle Beach as the sun was rising, spend the day at the beach before we even let family know we were even in town, drive through the night, pull into the beach as the sun rises, then go to the house and let the rest of the family know, listen, we're here. While we're here, we need to see everybody. But my children will tell you now, that's what they learned. And unfortunately, that's a lost art for a lot of families.
Yeah, when I hear your story, I think about growing up on Spring Road, Washington, D.C. Those who are watching who grew up with me know about growing up. We were just one. I knew everybody on the block. Mr. Rainey, who's passed away, Miss Brown, who passed away, Miss Horag, who passed away, Miss Drummer, Miss Draper. She's still here. I knew everybody on the block. We knew everybody on the whole block. I knew my phone number, 462-7457. That was my phone number. I didn't need nobody to give me a class on learning it. I knew my phone number. We didn't have Instagram, YouTube, Marco Polo, LiveMe, TikTok. We didn't have none of the social media platforms, but we communicated. I want to go to Brother Campbell, Mr. Campbell, who has my godson growing up today. I want you to, first of all, go back and talk about the 10-year-old, 15-year-old Campbell, and how mom, who's still here today, who you still go and see up in New Jersey, and want to bring her here and show her all the love you can. Go back and talk about how important it was for your parents to make sure you know your people, in instilling that in you. Then I want to ask you, the second part of this is, how is it important for you to have my godson to know the people, to the family, to keep the generation alive and to connect it?
You know, just like everybody else's story, it's the same. You know, we grew up in a generation where to this day, I will get in the car and drive from DC to Jersey, pick up my mom, drive across the bridge to New York, where we're spending time with my aunts and uncles and cousins. And to have my son take part in that is extremely important, because being able to connect with family is, if you don't know who you are, you don't know, who you can become and where you're going. That foundation of understanding who are your grandparents, who are who members of your family, who are your cousins, what are they doing? Just sitting down hearing the stories, being community, being family is extremely important. So on average, I'll do about twice a month that I will drive to Jersey to make sure that my mom get a chance to be with her grandson, and then make sure that my mother then goes with me to the city to be with her sisters, cousins, friends, and just sit down with them for an hour, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. It's always a short visit that lasts 12 hours. So that the importance of connecting has not dissipated from me as an adult. It's vital, it's critical. So making sure my son understands that. And then we're driving to Atlanta, we're driving to Birmingham, we're driving, we put a lot of miles in the car. So if the car needs tires, we get tires. Need brakes, we get brakes. Because just like you, Candace, you're supposed to go an hour away before you know it, you're in Miami. You're like, how we get here? You just had gas, we just kept on driving, talking on the phone, and before you know, we're knocking at somebody's house and visiting. So folks would know, if they tell me you're welcome anytime, I take them up on it, seriously. When my son meet people, he asked me once, he said, why do I have so many moms? I said, because you have Mama Bintu, Mama Camille, Mama this, Mama, it's family, so you just call them Mama whatever. Uncle Rob, Uncle Marlon, Uncle Benny, it's family. If they're friends, they're family. We don't know who's family and who's blood, because when we're together, we're just all family. A couple of weeks ago, I took four or five of the boys that were around between 5 and 11 years old, took them for the day, went out to the water, down by the beach, not the beach, but the waterfront in DC, Southwest waterfront, and the pier, and then brought them to the house. We just played, ate, had a good time. And it's just giving a chance for them to they're on the same age, they commune together, they see each other, but to give them a chance to really just come together and be family together is important. So I've duplicated what my mom was doing to me when I was younger, taking me to see the cousins, see the aunts, see the uncles, maintain that as an adult, taking her to make sure she sees her sisters and cousins and other family members, because she's not engaging with them every day as she used to. And making sure my son is connecting with my mom, his grandmother, and his cousins and steps, all that wonderful thing. So the story of how we are interconnected and passed on through those generations and keep the family line going, whether blood or just through friendship, is being carried on, is significantly important. So, Doc, thank you for that question, because it's still happening. It's not happening as much as we would like for it to happen, but there's still ways that we're passing down, connecting generations. Unfortunately, we're not having as many family barbecues or family reunions as we did, but I think as we come out of COVID, moving into the next phase, people are going to really appreciate the fact that we can actually come together, hug, sit together, and be together. So may not be this summer per se, but maybe towards Christmas, New Year, it's going to be a lot more tightness, closeness coming together when we do get together, because we realize that we're only here for a limited period of time. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just so excited. You know, when I hear you guys talk from London, England, to New York, to the DMV. I want to go down to Atlanta, Georgia. Our public relations person just joined us. She's been working behind the scene on a big project for PIC today. Michelle Cox is getting ready to come on the screen. I want Michelle to talk about, again, we're talking about reconnecting the generations, Michelle, and there's something, and I'll always go take it with you to another level, Michelle. You know how we talk.
Yes, I do. Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. I'm Michelle. I'm here in Auburn, Alabama today. People might know him, you might not, but we have a new show coming on with Mr. David Montoya. He is the CEO and started a company called LearnCrete, LURNCRETE. And so that's what I'm doing right now. But you guys are talking about connecting the generations. Mm-hmm. And my story is a lot different because I'm military family. The one thing about being in the military families are your family, more so than your family, because a lot of military people, they travel a lot. I was born in Boston. I grew up in Mississippi. My dad was in the Navy 27 years. And so we left Boston when I was 9 months old. Now, my aunt and uncle lived in Boston, but I didn't know them. And then I never met my grandparents. My father's grandmother died when I was a little baby. And there was also a blood feud going on in my family. And so, and we moved from Boston to the Jim Crow South, and we didn't have a car. So we really didn't travel because of 6 kids. It just didn't happen. But our military family is what kept us afloat. When we moved to Meridian, Mrs. Lewis and Mr. Lewis took our family in and helped us to integrate into the Meridian society. Our families went on vacation together, and it was just a staycation. We would go to waterworks. The men would cook and barbecue, and my mom and Mrs. Lewis would do things. Now, me and my best friend, Audrey Lewis, have been best friends since I moved to Meridian, Mississippi, and I was 9 months old. We were in a crib together. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. And so Mrs. Lewis worked for the Head Start program. She was the regional director at the time. My mom would keep me and Audrey. And then when Miss Lewis had Eric, the baby, she'd keep all of us. And so I've had a friendship now going on 59 years with my best friend, Audrey Lewis. And she's now Audrey Lewis Adams. And my brothers were friends with her brothers. So my brother, I have 4 brothers, Emil, Kenneth, Ronnie, Michael. They were friends with Harry and Bobby, the other Lewis boys. And, everybody picked up the baby, of course. And then my sister and I were friends with all the girls. And there was Marianne, Helen Marie, Tootsie, Joyce. And so we were family friends. And anytime you with military people, they become your family. If you don't have family there, you always have family in the military. So no matter where you go, you're never alone. And that's the family that I have. So like Ian said that, have a lot of moms. I have a lot of moms, have a lot of uncles, but military people get each other through. And it was one of those things that growing up in the Jim Crow South, when we lived on the base, the rules, the societal rules didn't affect us on base. Because in Meridian proper back in those days, we really couldn't have any white friends, but we had white friends on base. And my mother's other best friend, she was a Filipino and just an amazing lady. And so it's those kinds of family that you get. Dr. Evans, thanks so much for inviting me on, and I can see the floor.
You know, when I hear from you, you know, we're just so blessed. I know you've been working behind the scenes, doing great things to help our network to bring a lot of people to us. But I want to go a little deeper with you, Michelle. I want you to talk a little bit about what we talked about on last night. The person who you looked up to, who's almost 90-something years old. I think you was talking about when the house burnt down. I want to get into that a little bit and how you rallied together to still make it through that. Come on, Michelle.
Well, I told you about the Lewis family. Mrs. Lewis actually, before she just passed away very recently. She was 102 years old. And so her and my mom were best friends. When our house burned down and my mom we didn't have any clothes, they literally, she gave my mother coats and clothes and helped our whole family out with food and everything. They rallied around us. And the Lewis family and the Cox family have been just tight forever. I was at her 90th birthday party. I was at her 100th birthday party. And Audrey and I, we've maintained a friendship all these years, but Mrs. Lewis was an octogenarian and 102, blessed. This is one of the few people I know that's 102 years old that I know personally. But let's even go a little deeper. When my mother was ready to go into the workforce, Mrs. Lewis gave my mother a job at Head Start. And so my mother became a Head Start teacher in Lauderdale County. And so it's those bonds that have kept us all these years. And no matter, that's the one thing when we talk about family then, we had the community rallying around us. But at the same time, you had someone watching. When we talk about the village concept, that was our village. Literally, in Meridian, Mississippi, there weren't too many people I didn't know. It was a small town. When we lived there, it was like 20,000 people. And we lived on all sides of town. But I went to a Catholic church and Catholic school. And so I have 24 friends. We all were in the same class that we kept up with each other over the years. And then I have more classmates that we've kept up. And Mrs. Lewis and my mom were friends until death. My mom actually passed away before Mrs. Lewis. And so it pained me to have to tell her that mom passed away because I was going to bring her to Mrs. Lewis's birthday party because she was at the 90th, but she didn't make it to the 100th. And, you know, you wonder if you should tell. And I was like, I have to tell you the truth. And I was like, you know, and I had Audrey and Tootsie and, you know, the kids. And I was like, you know, Mama went to glory. You know, I didn't want to tell you, but I had to because I know she's your best friend and you were looking for her. And so for me, Mrs. Lewis is my other mom. Now I have some other moms out there, and if you guys see me, you know, I'm gonna call you guys out. Mrs. Jordan, Mrs. Susie Howard, you know, Mrs. Heidelberg, Mrs. Bishop, you know, I had all these moms that have helped me through the years, you know, and sometimes you didn't want moms to help you through the years, but I got another special mom, and she's also in heaven. And that's my Aunt Titi. My Aunt Titi used to keep us. And here's the deal. There's six of us, six children in my family, and then my mom and dad. And so we struggled. Well, Aunt Titi would keep us, and she would charge my mother anything. If anything else, she would send us home with food to make sure that we were okay. So that's what I grew up into. And thank you for letting me share, Dr. Evans. It always kind of makes me emotional, and I'm trying to stay, you know, just keep it together. But it's a community that I was blessed to have.
Yeah, and that's why we're on tonight. Those who are watching the PIC TV network and those who are watching on all forms of social media, we here talking about reconnecting the generations. There's something that's been lost. You know, I think sometimes with all of these social media tools, Instagram that doesn't go off, YouTube, Clubhouse, TikTok, Live Me, Marco Polo, and a lot of other ones that I haven't even named yet, Periscope, that doesn't go off. Our generation is kind of like hooked into this social media world. The book you wrote about Mommy is the Computer Smarter Than Me. It's just the world that we living in today is just so far out. I want to go, we're going to take a break after we have Mr. Campbell to come back again. Now you again have my godson there, you know, and growing up, we talk every day, and he's at the playground with you, not the teachers. You're talking to me and you talk every day. He's growing out of those clothes, man. You know, you talk to my godson every day, and he's there loving on you, man. How important. And there's a lot of people watching all over the world. As a dad, for you to be there for your son, because he's your heartbeat, man. You'll let him live and transfer out if you have to. Why is that so important to you, Mr. Campbell?
You know, it's what we learned. You know, it's the responsibility that comes with the job. The job is a caretaker. So it's my responsibility to make sure that I do whatever I can to take care of him, because that is the job. I don't expect the teachers to do that job. I expect the teachers to teach, you know, to do the one little job that they're assigned to do during the time that they get that job. I don't expect the police officers to be intervening and raising my child, because he's not going to be stepping outside the law, because I'm taking care of him at home, so he knows what his boundaries are. As a matter of fact, when he sees a police officer, he walks up to them and asks me, "Hey, how you doing? Do you have a badge for me?" Because the police officers actually give the kids badge. When he sees a fireman, he walks up to them and asks them, "How are you? Do you have a badge for me?" The ambulance, because I want him not to be afraid of people in uniform, to understand that as a citizen, he actually takes the responsibility of paying those public servants so they can do their job. For him not to be fearful of them, but actually make sure they're doing their job. I make sure that he has the information he needs to be a good human being, a good person, a professional, whatever he's going to be, putting all these things into him, showing by example, leading by example. And it's so funny. I mean, I was in the car driving. I went through the yellow light, and he's talking about, "Daddy ran the red light." I'm like, "Hey," you know. So it's interesting how they pick up on, because he's learning about red light, green light. He's learning about stop sign, yield, laws, train tracks, this, that, and the other. Every day, everything is a learning experience for him. Everything is a new thing. So my job is to constantly write on that blank page. Everything is a new experience. And then even though he may have experienced this before, I have to reinforce it, because repetition. Everything that I've experienced, my goal is to put it into him as quickly as possible, so it helps him with his understanding, his concept, his exposure needs to be what my exposure was, so that he doesn't have to make the same mistakes that I've made or I'm making. In that process, whatever it takes to get him to that point is what I have to do. So if it means that it's extra tutoring, it's extra teachings, athletics, what have you. Whatever it takes is what I'm doing. So if I have to lay down to make sure he rises up, that's the job. We're doing the job that we're here to do. And, looking at all these mothers that have come before me and did do a phenomenal job, I'm just, the responsibility is even greater. I'm like, man, I'm just trying to keep up with, this young lady got 3. I have 1. I have nothing to complain about. So to look at the job that others are doing, for the fathers, we just have to be present. We just have to step up, be present, be there, and be supportive. And these little kids raise themselves. They don't want too much help with anything. They can pretty much do it. We just need to guide them and put them in the right direction. So if we give them that direction and kind of put them, in on the right path, they make it happen. So we just need to be present, be there, make sure that they're not stepping off the path, or tell them why they need to stay on the path, because they're gonna step off the path. We need to be able to, pull them back. We create that boundary and the barrier for them. So thank you, Doc.
Yeah, everybody on this planet, I believe we here for a season and reason. I believe we're here to make the world a better place. I believe my parents, John and Esther Evans, was trying to instill on me, David Evans, that when you get 60 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old, 90 years old, maybe 100, don't forget to get back. Don't disconnect the generation because of the devices that we have. Spend time to put the kid in the car and take him down like I took you down there, and show him a day. Spend some time with him. Show him where your aunt is, your uncle is. Even if they passed away, show him where the gravesite is. Take him down to the homeless shelter and show him how to give some food to somebody who don't have any. This is the things that I did when I was young. My parents will always give to others. And I instilled that in Stephen and Amos. My kid was crying one time because I bought him a Happy Meal, Pat, and they was hungry. Allison, they was just so happy. Then I saw a homeless man on the street corner. This was about 17, 18 years ago. And I said, give your food away, Stephen. Give them to that homeless man, Amos. Give them their food, Stephen and Amos. Give them. They said, no, Dad, no, I'm hungry. These are my fries. These are my drink. I said, no, give it to him. And they gave it to him, and they started crying. And I took them back to McDonald's and said, now y'all order anything you want. And here it is, 25 years later, my son Stephen, who lives in Hollywood, California, he's out there with the biggest artist in the world, J-Lo, Stephen's there. Jamie Foxx Studio, Stephen's there. He's doing some big things with John Legend right now in some movies. Post Malone's been on the Tonight Show several times. He called me at Christmas and said, Dad, guess where I'm at in Hollywood? I said, where's Stephen? He said, I'm down under the bridge giving my clothes away. I'm giving my clothes away to some homeless people, because that's what you did when I was young. You taught me to do that. I'm not losing those shoes. I got so many shoes I can change every day or whatever. I'm not using these suits. Don't mean anything. Giving it away. So those little things like that is what we have to reconnect the generation. We have to keep the things that we grew up alive by showing example to our kids. And maybe this time during COVID-19 is a lesson for all of us to go back to school, the school of love, joy, peace, long-suffering, meekness, faith, temperance, to bring us back to family values that we all locked in together, because at the end of the day, we all one. Hey, everybody, I want to thank you for your time on watching our network tonight. We got so many comments. We're going to come back in part 2 right after our segment. And we're just happy again for all of you watching the PIC TV network. Please stay tuned for some more information. We got some breaking news we want to share with you before we close this segment and we go into our new segment. And again, all of these comments, I see you popping in all over the place on YouTube, all these chats coming in. We thank you for your beautiful chats, and want you to continue to talk about how you're enjoying the program. People are literally coming in telling us that they love the conversation. We feel the love. We feel the yeses that you guys are saying. We feel the things that you grew up and you're talking about. Thank you for just all of these wonderful comments around the country, you know, and many more that we see on our end. And we're going to have part 2 of our segment. And this is a series. And if you want to be a part of this series, you can chat the information. And before we leave, I wanted to give you one more big special announcements. We are so happy to announce the public website that we have, the breaking news. The PIC TV Network website is out, www.thepictvnetwork.com. I want you to check it out. And these special guests from all over the country, they're just so great and so good. So let's wave, everybody. We're going to close out this segment. Let's say a good wave to everybody who's on today. And we're going to come back, y'all, in our next segment talk right after this. Thank you for your time, everybody. Hey, thank you again for everybody. So long. See you next program.